Hello everyone, it's Shel C from PaperOcotilloStudio, and today I'm sharing with you another mixed media canvas. This one is, I think, a 6 by 8, so it's a little bit bigger. You know, I'm doing that 100 days project, which I declared that I would do 100 mixed media collages, and so that's what I'm doing. I wanted to mess around with this idea that I had this morning. I guess you're seeing it the next day, so it was yesterday morning, day 45, and had this idea that I could use distress ink in a very light color to get an impression of a stencil. And this is a new to me stencil. This one is from Stencil Girl Products, designed by Gwen LaFleur, and it's got these two strange, whimsical faces. To me, I call this one a jester. I think it looks like a jester because it has a cap and it has a little funny spiky collar around the neck. I mean, she must have had fun designing these. I don't know exactly what she was thinking or if she thinks this is a jester or what, but it's fun and cute. And I picked up some stencils with my design team discount before it runs out, so I have some new ones. So I took a piece of thin, very thin rice paper. This is from Daiso, so it's really thin and it has a smooth side and a rough side. I put the rough side down over the top of the stencil, and then I took a little distress ink pad. I think the color was straw, maybe. I don't know. It was a very light yellow. And I didn't want to be able to see the stencil rubbing in the end. I just wanted to be able to paint over it and be able to see where things were on the paper with the ink. So that was kind of the idea. So I made basically what is a stencil rubbing. Usually you would use something firmer than an ink pad. I've never done it with an ink pad before, but it works, and I knew it would. And so now I have this image of what was on the stencil on my rice paper. And then I got out some watercolor. On the left is like just a amalgamation of higher end watercolors, and then on the right is a set of Daniel Smith ones. It's a primary set on the ends, and then I have green, gold, Payne's gray, and Prussian blue in there too. Just some ones that I have, and I decided to just paint over it with watercolor. So I thought it should be bright colors. I made the cap pink and purple, and I made the flower around the eye orange, and I've got some green, and then the rest of it I did kind of I'm not sure what exactly the color it is, but it's like yellow ochre or something like that. Just a yellowy, dull yellowy color. And at some point I mix it with a little bit of browns, probably like a sienna color, and then maybe I mixed it with a little bit of white to get a highlight. But I can't see the stencil image clearly. And that was intentional. If you have a stencil, every time you stencil it, it's going to be the same, right? And it's going to be someone else's drawing because you didn't draw it, you just bought the stencil. And so I kind of look for ways to use my stencils so that they're not quite so recognizable. Now this one ends up being super recognizable. You can tell that's her design. But still, my hand painting it changed it some. Maybe not in a good way. But you know what I'm saying. It changed it a little bit because I couldn't see exactly the image made from the rubbing, but I could get an idea of it. Does that make sense? So I am painting something that she drew, but it comes out looking more mine, just based on my hand being kind of painting this. It's hard to explain. I tried to do a little bit of shading by mixing some different colors with the watercolor, but basically the paper was getting saturated pretty quickly, and it's a very thin paper. The reason that I used a thin paper instead of trying to do this on like a watercolor paper is two reasons. One, I wanted to collage it onto that canvas that you saw at the beginning. It's intended to be a collage piece. And the other reason is that it'd be really hard to get stencil rubbing through a piece of watercolor paper because it's very thick, especially the ones I have, which are, I mean, there are thinner. There's like an 80-pound watercolor paper. There's also mixed media paper, but what I wanted was something thin that I could collage. So that's the reason I used the rice paper. And it held up to the water fine. It just did wrinkle a little bit. So then when it was dry, I wanted to seal it, so I just put a few drops of fluid matte medium on it and then just carefully brayered over it with a brayer a couple times to spread it around. And I'm going to set that aside to dry. I don't know what's wrong with my voice, guys. I just don't talk very much. And then when I go to do voiceovers, my voice is always weird. So I got a couple napkins that had similar colors, sort of, and had a kind of a similar theme, patterned napkins. I received these in the mail recently as Happy Mail, so I grabbed them and I'm tearing them apart and making a really wild and crazy background with a lot of pattern. That was my intention. So I used my water brush to cut out the centers of this napkin and glued those down with fluid matte medium. I should have grabbed my napkin medium, but this turned out okay. It did wrinkle a little bit, but not so much that it really bothers me particularly. Then with this other one, I cut out circles as well out of the centers of each design. It's kind of a turquoise colored flower, and I wanted to put that on. A little bit of a floral theme. We've got turquoise, we've got orange, no pink, which kind of disappointed me a little bit. There is that burgundy color, but it's not really the same pink. So you can see my drawing piece on the left and my background don't really match that much. But it's going to be okay. I'll make them integrate eventually. Then I just started tearing other little pieces of the napkin and filling in places that still had white after I put the circles. Trying to use the flowers as much as possible. There was another little section that had a bunch of flowers on it. I tore that out. Flowers and pattern. I think this is something that Gwen LaFleur might make, the person who drew this. She likes a lot of paisley and a lot of layers. She's really into layers. So it's kind of her style a little bit, although still reflecting my style as well. So who knows? I don't know. You'd have to ask her. Maybe she'll comment. I don't know if she will. I used one of her bird designs that I had recently got, and she commented on my Instagram, so she saw it, obviously. You never know when you use someone else's design what they think about. Obviously, the design to stencil for people to use it, so it's not like it's proprietary, but it's also just kind of weird to me when I'm capable of drawing my own stuff. Using someone else's stuff is a little bit, I don't know. I worry that they won't like what I made with it. So I'm just about done with the background, gluing out on all these little pieces of napkin to make my background. And yeah, this canvas is just an inch bigger all around than what I have been using, I think. I was using 5x7s. I don't know. It's a little bit bigger. The stencil is on a 9x12 piece, and so it was bigger than the 5x7 little canvases. A lot of it wouldn't have made it on there, so that's the reason I grabbed this slightly bigger one. I'm trying to make small things and not spend a whole day making something larger. So then The rice paper's dry now, so I cut out the image and then I am gluing it down using that same fluid matte medium and my distress collage brush to try to get it all smooth and no bubbles, no wrinkles. The bigger piece that you collage on, the more likely you are to have a problem with getting bubbles and wrinkles. So, got to be a little bit careful. So, I dried that. I cut that part out. And now I have a Stabilo All pencil. This is a water reactive pencil, highly water reactive pencil. And I'm going around and kind of drawing in the features. I really can't see them. I know they're there, but I can't exactly see them. Maybe I should have used a little bit of darker color distress ink. I am going to try some more techniques transferring stencil designs this way because using watercolors is really fun with stencils, and a lot of people have been doing that lately. But this is just a different way of doing it, a different technique that I don't know. It was morning and I was half asleep and I thought of it. One of those type of things. So I do plan to blend this pencil. I am going to after I get everything drawn in to make a watery shadow. I was trying to stick with the watery watercolor effect here and not make it look like acrylic. I think in the end it looks more like acrylic than anything because I ended up putting a lot of layers on this. Didn't stop here. I just kept going. Sometimes I do that. So now I'm blending with my water tank brush. This is a little brush that has water inside the barrel. It comes out onto the synthetic bristle brush really easily just by squeezing that red section in the middle where there's a little bit of a valve. Love these kinds of brushes. I use it all the time, almost every project. Blech. So going around making that shadow by blending out that Stabilo All pencil. Someone asked me the other day, what's the difference between ink tints and Stabilo and why don't I use ink tints? Because an ink tints pencil is permanent once it's been activated with water. And this is the difference. It makes much more impression. It's more water soluble and it doesn't leave a line. You could really, if you wanted to, completely blend it out. That's why I use this one most often. Also, the ink tints pencils are in the drawer and this one's on the desk. So any of you who regularly use your studio will know what that means. If it's right in front of you, you're a lot more likely to use it than if you have to go dig for it. And that's just a sad truth. So now I have an acrylic paint pen. This is a new Arteza fine tip, and I got a pack of 20, 10 whites and 10 blacks. And it's got a nice fine tip. I'm adding my highlight onto the places and then kind of blending with my finger, with my middle finger a little bit, so that it's not just a line, it's more like a smear, but a smear in the place that I want it, if that makes sense. I also highlighted with the shadows and highlights a flower that's just to the left of the figure. I don't like to put things right in the middle. I think they look better if they're offset. So to balance the composition, I highlighted that flower that's from the napkin. So now I want to calm down the background a little bit so that the figure stands out more from the background. So I mixed some glazing medium with some fluid acrylic paint. It's called jade green, but it's kind of like a turquoise color, similar to what was in the napkin, I thought. So I'm just painting around the focal images and then in places kind of making the paint go to the background more by patting it with a damp baby wipe. That's what it is. So that you can still see those napkins. I mean, what's the point of putting all the napkins on if you're not going to be able to see it, right? That's just silly. but I didn't want it to be in your face pattern. I wanted the focal image to be focal. So that's the reason I did that. So then I started thinking I need pink. I need pink to be in the background because I have it in a lot of pink going on in this gesture image, and I want some pink to be in that other other part of the focal image, which is that flower. So I got out some Posca pins, and this is a pink Posca pen, which is an acrylic paint pen, and this is a fine tip one. And where the flower in the center was orange, I switched it. I just painted over the top of it with the pen to make it pink, and then I added that same pink in a few other places so that you would have that color all the way through the composition. Generally, if you use a color in a spot, you should use it in a couple other spots. And then I had some peachy colored Posca pens, and I wanted to I wanted to alter the shape of the nose. The black Stabilo all went a little bit crazy on the nose, and it really bled out and it looked weird. So I wanted to kind of narrow it down. So that's when I got out the Posca pen. But of course, the Posca pen isn't the same as the watercolor paint. And this is where we start getting away from the watercolor paint. At this point, everything is sealed, and I can't come back with the same color of watercolor because it wouldn't do anything over the top of a sealed surface, which has, of course, been sealed with the fluid matte medium that I collaged it on. So then I have to get a little bit creative with some other media, which is going to be an acrylic because that's the only thing that's going to go over the top of this acrylic medium. So I got out some different colors of peachy, pinky, more orangey, and then a brown, and I started doing highlights and corrections with that over the face. And I ended up getting a lot more, it looks more dimensional that way than just being the one color. I did do shadows and highlights with the watercolor, but it just kind of all faded out. So I'm just messing around with that. I've also got some Stabilo Woody pencils, and I end up bringing out one of those. Well, in the end, actually a couple of those, and use them as well. They're like the Stabilo black pencil. It's just they're fat. They're made for kids, I think, and they're fun and fat, and you can sharpen them down to a point if you want to, but I haven't actually sharpened these yet. I used the blue, I used orange, and then I ended up bringing in the pink, the light pink, and that's when I really got happy because I ended up using the light pink on some of the skin tone and the hat and kind of brightening it up a little bit, and then using it on the skin tone made me happy. It made it a lot more dimensional and more finished looking, I think. And I guess the blue too. I brought in a little bit of the blue to add kind of a blue highlight. I like the way it looks. It's scribbly and fun, and yeah, I love those Stabilo Woodies. So this thing ended up being so mixed media. I used so many different things. I just all kinds of different detailing products, and then in the end I even put on glitter and stick-on gemstones. So it's very, very mixed media. It's textural and lots of sparkle and fun stuff. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please remember to give it a thumbs up. You can, of course, leave me a comment below if you have a question or a comment about something that I did or why I did it that I didn't explain. You can, of course, subscribe if you haven't already. We're going for 20,000 subscribers, so I'm super happy for every single one of you who subscribes to my channel. I just love that. And you can share this, pin it, all those type of things. Anything that you do with my videos on social media helps me because it helps other people find my content, which is something very tricky on YouTube to find small channels content, So thanks very much for you guys supporting my channel and doing all those things. So I'm just about done. Here's a little boomerang that kind of shows you the shimmeriness and then the photos. That's it for me. Thanks. Bye bye.